The galaxy still remembered the war. For years it had been written in blood and fire. The Dragon Emperor, ruler of countless stars, had vanished into battle with his armies. Some said he was dead. Some said he was lost in the endless void, swallowed by the darkness between worlds. Many whispered that he would never return. But they were wrong. On this night, when the moons of his empire hung low and silver above the great capital, the Dragon Emperor came home. He came quietly, without banners or horns, without the noise of soldiers. His ship landed in secret, far from the gates where the crowds once cheered for him. The Emperor stepped down, his armor scarred and darkened by war. His eyes burned like coals, sharp and watchful, but his heart carried something heavy. He had seen too much. He had buried too many, and now all he wanted was silence. The palace stood before him, a mountain of stone and light, yet tonight it felt strange. Too quiet, too dark. The towers were lit, but the glow was weak, like fading candles. The gates were closed. No guards sang his name. No servants ran to bow. It was as if the palace itself had forgotten him. The Emperor moved with the silence of a shadow. He chose not to enter through the grand gates. Instead, he walked the hidden paths only he knew, the secret ways of kings who did not trust their own courts. His footsteps echoed faintly against old marble as he slipped inside. Inside, the palace air was heavy. Dust floated in the moonlight. The grand halls that once roared with laughter and music now felt empty, hollow. The walls whispered of betrayal, though no voice spoke. The Emperor did not go to the throne. He did not call his generals. He did not announce his return. He wanted to see one person, his human Maid. Among the dragons, humans were considered weak. They were small, fragile, and short-lived. Yet this Maid had served him faithfully before the war. She was the one who cleaned his chambers, brought him food, and kept his halls alive with small acts of care. He remembered her quiet eyes and the way she bowed without fear. In a palace full of scheming lords and greedy ministers, she had been simple, honest, loyal. And so, after years of fire and blood, the Emperor wished to see her face before anyone else. He climbed the stairs to his chambers. Each step felt heavier, as if the palace itself did not want him there. The silence pressed around him. He expected to hear nothing, only the beating of his own heart. But then, he froze. From the shadows of his chambers, faint sounds reached his ears. Not footsteps, not whispers of servants. Something stranger. A faint clatter of metal. The crackle of energy. A sound like glass breaking, then silence again. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, his wings folded tightly behind his cloak. His heart, a heart that had never feared in battle, now beat with a sharp edge of suspicion. Who was inside his chambers? He pushed the door slightly, just enough to let the moonlight spill in. And there, inside his private room, stood his Maid. But she was not sweeping the floor. She was not cleaning the bed, nor folding his robes. She was bent over something strange, a table glowing with light. Sparks of energy flashed across it, casting blue fire against her face. Her hands, delicate but firm, worked quickly with pieces of broken metal. Tools lay scattered around her feet. She moved with focus, whispering words he could not hear. The Emperor watched, hidden in the dark. His eyes widened. This was no ordinary work. This was no cleaning. His loyal Maid was building something. Something forbidden. Something powerful. The sound came again. Crack, hiss, spark. She adjusted the device, and for a moment, the glow grew brighter, humming like a beast waking from sleep. The Emperor's claws tightened at his side. His breath was slow, careful. Why was she doing this? She should not even know such knowledge. Humans were not trained in the arts of energy, nor in the secrets of weapons. And yet, here she was shaping something dangerous in his very chamber. The Maid paused. She wiped sweat from her brow. In the silence, she whispered to herself, "I must finish before he returns. If I fail, he will die. If I fail, we will all die." The Emperor's eyes flared. His heart pounded. Her words cut through him like a blade. What did she mean? Who was she speaking of? Him? The Emperor? And what enemy was she preparing for, even after the war was over? For the first time in years, the Dragon Emperor felt something unusual. Not rage, not battle hunger, but doubt. Suspicion. Curiosity. The greatest warrior of the galaxy, conqueror of stars, now stood frozen outside his own chamber, unsure of the truth. His maid, the one he thought simple and loyal, now looked like a stranger before him. A secret burned in her hands, and whatever it was tied to his fate. The palace was silent. The night was still, and the Dragon Emperor realized his war was not over. Not yet. The Dragon Emperor did not move. He stood in the shadow of his own chamber door, watching the human maid work in secret. His eyes glowed faintly, like embers hidden in the dark. His breath was slow, steady, but inside his chest, his heart thundered like war drums. This was not the maid he remembered. She had been gentle, quiet, soft in her words. She used to bow before him, carry his armor, sweep the floor with calm patience. But now she looked different. Her face was sharp with focus, her hands moved with skill, and her eyes burned with a strange fire. The sparks danced again across the table. The device she worked on pulsed with light, as if it had a heartbeat. The hum grew stronger. The maid whispered to herself once more. Just a little more. Before it is too late. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. Too late for what? The war was over. His enemies had been crushed. The galaxy lay silent under his rule. And yet here was his maid, building something dangerous, speaking as if doom still lurked in the shadows. He stepped closer. His claw brushed the doorframe, but she did not notice. She was lost in her work. The device on the table was strange. Metal plates joined with shards of crystal, wires like veins, and at the center, a core glowing blue. The Emperor knew what it was, though he wished he was wrong. It was the beginning of a weapon, not a simple blade, not a tool of mortals, but something older, forbidden, the kind of weapon kings and emperors locked away, because even they feared its power. The Dragon Emperor's wings tightened under his cloak. He had fought countless battles, faced entire fleets, crushed armies. But this secret in the hands of his maid was something he did not expect. His first thought was betrayal. Had she turned against him? Had the humans, the fragile ones he had allowed to live in his palace, chosen to betray the one who gave them protection? Was she building this for his enemies? But then he remembered her whisper. If I fail, he will die. Her words echoed inside him. She was not talking about herself. She was talking about him. The Dragon Emperor felt a shiver. Not of fear, but of confusion. His loyal maid, a human with no training, no power, no reason to risk her life, was working in secret to build something that might protect him. But why in secret? Why hide it from him? The Emperor stayed in the shadows, watching. The maid's hands trembled as she fit a shard of crystal into the core. The hum grew louder, filling the chamber with a low, dangerous song. Her lips moved as she spoke softly, as if praying. They think he will not return. They think the throne is empty. But I know he is alive. I feel it. I must be ready when he comes back. I will not let them harm him. The Emperor's eyes widened. So, she believed in him when no one else did. The galaxy thought he was dead. Yet she waited, prepared, and worked in secret for his return. But who was they? Who wanted him dead? The Emperor's claws flexed. His mind sharpened. He had always suspected betrayal in his court. Ministers who smiled too much. Generals who bowed too low. But war had taken him away before he could see the truth. Now, his maid spoke of enemies hidden inside his own palace. The chamber suddenly felt colder. The Emperor's instincts told him not to reveal himself yet. He had returned too early, too suddenly. If there were traitors in the palace, they could still be watching. If he stepped forward now, he might frighten the maid or worse. She might fall into silence, never telling him the full truth. So he waited. He leaned against the shadowed wall, his golden eyes unblinking. He watched her struggle with the weapon, saw her nearly burn her hands when the sparks leapt high. She did not cry out, did not give up. She pressed forward, biting her lip, whispering again, "For him, for my emperor. Even if I die, I must finish this." The emperor felt something heavy move in his chest. In the war, he had seen warriors betray him for gold. He had seen kings bend their knees to save their lives. He had seen soldiers flee when the enemy fire grew too strong. Loyalty was rare. Trust was rarer. And yet here, in his own palace, a simple human maid showed more courage than entire armies. But he still needed answers. The device on the table gave another hum, brighter now, as if it was waking. The light spilled across the room, revealing the determination in her eyes. She adjusted a gear, tightened a wire, and the glow steadied. She sighed in relief. Almost ready. Soon, they will not be able to touch him. The emperor clenched his jaw. Who were they? Before he could wonder more, the maid suddenly froze. Her head turned, her eyes narrowing. She felt something, a presence, a weight in the air. The dragon emperor held his breath. His power always carried a shadow, and though he tried to hide it, sensitive souls could still feel it. The maid whispered, "Who's there?" The chamber was silent. She stood slowly, her small hand gripping a tool like a weapon. Her eyes scanned the shadows, her voice sharp with fear and bravery. "Show yourself." The emperor did not move. For a long moment, they faced each other across the room, her standing with trembling courage. Him hidden in silence, watching the one he thought he knew but no longer understood. Finally, the maid lowered her tool. She muttered to herself, shaking her head, "I'm tired. Too tired. I'm imagining things." She turned back to the table, returning to her work. The emperor released a slow breath. But his mind was burning now. This was no ordinary secret. This was no ordinary maid. The palace around him was not the safe home he once knew. Somewhere in its walls, traitors were waiting, planning his death. And the only person who seemed to be preparing to save him was the fragile human he once thought unimportant. The Dragon Emperor's return was meant to be quiet, simple, a moment of peace. Instead, it had become the beginning of a new battle. And the first move had already been made by his maid. The chamber glowed with the strange blue light. The air felt charged, as if a storm had entered the room. The maid's small hands worked quickly, moving wires, adjusting crystals, tightening gears. Every spark lit her determined face, and every whisper from her lips carried weight. The Dragon Emperor remained hidden in the shadows. He had returned home to silence, but this silence was not peace. It was a silence full of secrets. For a long time he only watched. He wanted to understand. The maid's words repeated in his mind. "If I fail, he will die. If I fail, we will all die." Did she mean him? Did she mean the empire? He thought of the war. He thought of the enemies he had crushed, the thrones he had burned, the fleets he had destroyed. He thought of the nobles who had bowed to him while hiding daggers behind their backs. And then he thought of her, the maid who once bowed not because of fear, but because of respect. Could it be that the one person he least expected had uncovered a danger greater than war? The emperor's golden eyes narrowed as the maid leaned close to the weapon. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "They think he is gone. They believe he will never return. But I know he is alive. I can feel it." Her words struck him like a blade to the chest. When even his generals doubted him, when his nobles plotted to replace him, when the galaxy itself whispered of his death, this fragile human had believed. And not only believed, she had prepared. The emperor's wings shifted under his cloak. His heart, hardened by years of war, beat with something strange. Not anger, not suspicion, something else. But he could not allow his emotions to blind him. The weapon she built was dangerous. Too dangerous. The crystals she used were not meant to be touched by human hands. The wires she connected carried power that could burn entire cities. And the core, the glowing heart at the center, was forbidden, sealed away centuries ago by dragon kings who feared its destruction. How had she found it? Who had given her this knowledge? The Emperor's suspicion sharpened again. Was she working alone? Or was someone guiding her? The maid stepped back for a moment, breathing hard. Her hands shook, but her eyes never lost focus. She touched the glowing core gently, almost like a mother calming a restless child. "Just a little longer," she whispered. "When he returns, I will give him this. Then no one can hurt him." The Emperor's jaw tightened. It was true. She was building it for him. But still, why hide it? Why not trust him? A small sound broke his thoughts. The maid froze. She turned sharply, her eyes scanning the shadows. She felt it again, the heavy presence, the silent watcher. Her grip tightened on the metal tool in her hand. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice trembling but strong. The Emperor held his breath. His shadow always betrayed him. No matter how still he stood, the weight of his power pressed on the air. She had sensed it. The silence stretched between them. The maid's voice rose. "Show yourself." The Emperor almost stepped forward. His claws curled. His lips parted. But then, she lowered the tool and shook her head. "No, it's nothing. Just my imagination. I'm too tired." She turned back to her work, her shoulders tense but steady. The Emperor exhaled slowly. She had been ready to face the dark with nothing but a piece of metal in her hand. Brave yet foolish. Loyal yet secretive. The device gave a sharp hum, brighter this time. The blue glow spread across the walls, reaching into the corners of the chamber. The hum was deep, powerful, alive. The Emperor recognized the sound. It was the same hum he had heard long ago, on battlefields where forbidden weapons had been used. Weapons that could shatter entire fleets. Weapons even he had sworn never to use. His maid was close to finishing one. His mind raced. Should he stop her? Should he destroy it? Should he step forward and demand the truth? But then her whisper came again. Soft, desperate. "I don't care if they call me a traitor. I don't care if they kill me for this. I will protect him. I must." The Emperor's claws loosened. His suspicion clashed with his growing respect. She was no traitor. Not yet. Her fear, her secrecy, her work. It was all for him. But who was they? The question burned in his mind. The palace was quiet. Too quiet. He thought of the empty halls, the silent guards, the strange absence of life when he arrived. He thought of the ministers who might already believe he was dead, plotting to steal his throne. Now her whispers confirmed it. Enemies were here, inside, waiting, and she, a simple human maid, had chosen to fight them in the only way she could. The Emperor felt a decision forming in his heart. He could not remain in the shadows forever. Sooner or later, he would have to step forward, reveal himself, and confront her. But not yet. Not until he knew everything. For now, he let the secret burn. The maid bent over the device again, her face set with fierce determination. Sparks leapt, wires hissed, and the blue glow brightened until the entire chamber seemed alive with energy. She whispered one last time, her voice clear and steady. "Soon, soon he will return. And when he does, I will be ready." The Dragon Emperor's breath caught. She had no idea he was already here, standing only steps away. And in that moment, he realized the truth. His greatest battle had not been fought in the stars. It had been waiting here in his own palace. And it was only beginning. The blue glow of the strange device pulsed like a living heart. The hum filled the chamber, vibrating through the stone walls, spreading into the silent halls of the palace. The maid leaned over it, her face pale, her eyes fierce with determination. She whispered again, her voice low but steady. "Almost finished. Just a little more and he will be safe." But this time, the Dragon Emperor did not stay in the shadows. He had seen enough. His heavy steps echoed on the marble floor as he entered the chamber. The sound was sharp, final, like the strike of a war drum. The maid froze. Her hands stopped moving. Slowly, very slowly, she turned. Her eyes widened in shock. The tool in her hand slipped and clattered to the floor. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The Dragon Emperor stood tall in the doorway, his cloak dark around his armored body, his golden eyes burning in the glow of the weapon. He looked like a figure carved from fire and stone, returned from the dead. The maid stumbled back, her knees trembling. She dropped to the floor, bowing low, her forehead nearly touching the cold stone. "My lord," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Forgive me." The emperor's voice was deep, steady, like thunder rolling across the sky. "Forgive you? For what?" The maid shivered. She dared not lift her head. I should not be here. I should not be doing this. Please, punish me if you must. But believe me, I meant no harm." The emperor stepped closer. Each footstep was heavy, echoing. The blue glow wrapped around him, making him look even more powerful, more dangerous. He stopped only a few steps from her. His shadow fell across her trembling form. "Look at me," he commanded. Slowly, she raised her head. Her eyes were filled with fear, but also with something stronger, resolve. The emperor studied her face. She was pale, exhausted, but her gaze did not waver. "You speak of punishment," he said, his voice calm but sharp. "But punishment is for betrayal. Tell me, human, what is it you are doing here? And why do you work in secret, in my chambers, on something that should not exist?" The maid's throat tightened. She tried to speak, but the words caught. Finally, she forced them out. "I did it for you." The emperor's eyes narrowed. "For me?" She nodded quickly, tears forming in her eyes. "Yes, my lord. I swear it. I never wished to betray you. I never wished to hide anything from you. But I had no choice. If they knew, if they saw what I was doing, they would have killed me before I could finish." The emperor's voice dropped lower. "They? You speak of they again. Who are they?" The maid's hands clenched on her knees. She swallowed hard. Then, in a trembling whisper, she said, "The ones who wait for your throne. The ones who whispered that you were dead. The ones who plot even now, inside these very walls." The emperor's eyes blazed. His suspicion was true. "There are traitors," the maid continued, her voice stronger now. "Ministers, guards, even some of your own council. They said you would never return. They said the empire must choose another ruler. But I never believed them. I knew you would come back. I knew you were alive." Her breath shook, but her eyes held his firmly. "I found this," she gestured toward the glowing device. "Hidden in the lower vaults. They planned to use it to kill you if you returned. I stole the pieces before they could finish it. I rebuilt it here not to harm you, but to protect you, to turn their weapon against them." The chamber fell into heavy silence. The dragon emperor stared at her. A human maid, a fragile servant with no power, no wealth, had risked her life to stop treachery in his own palace. He stepped closer. She flinched but held her ground. "You," he said slowly, "stole this from my enemies?" She nodded. "Yes, my lord." "You," his voice hardened, "hid this from me?" She bowed again. "Yes, because if they knew I was helping you, they would kill me before I could even try." The emperor's wings shifted beneath his cloak. His breath was heavy, his chest rising and falling. For a long moment, he only stared at her, his mind torn between anger and something else. Finally, he spoke. "Stand." The maid hesitated. "I said stand." She rose on unsteady legs, her head lowered, her hands trembling. She looked so small before him, so weak compared to his towering form. And yet, she had done what no general, no minister, no lord had dared. "You risked your life," the emperor said, his voice deep. "For me." The maid swallowed. "Yes, my lord, because you gave me a place here when no one else would. You treated me with respect when others saw me as nothing. I would not let them take you from us." The emperor's eyes softened, just for a moment. Loyalty, pure loyalty, from the one he least expected. But before he could reply, a sound echoed in the hall outside. A creak, a footstep, a whisper. The maid's eyes widened in fear. She grabbed his arm, her voice urgent. "They are here." The emperor turned his head sharply, his senses flaring. Yes, he felt it now. the presence of others. Watching, waiting. The traitors had moved. The confrontation was not yet over. It was only beginning. The air in the chamber grew heavy. The faint hum of the weapon was drowned by another sound, soft footsteps in the corridor outside. The Dragon Emperor's sharp ears caught the whispers that followed. They say the chamber is empty. No, she is in there. And if she has failed, we finish the job ourselves. The maid's eyes widened. Her hands shook as she clutched the Emperor's arm. It's them, she whispered urgently. The traitors. They know. The Emperor's golden eyes flared with fire. His voice rumbled low, dangerous. They dare to step into my palace? Into my chambers? The door creaked. Then it burst open. A group of figures stormed inside, ministers in fine robes, guards with drawn blades, and two generals the Emperor once trusted. Their eyes widened when they saw him, alive, standing tall, his wings folded like a shadow behind him. The Emperor? One whispered, fear trembling in his voice. He lives. The others recovered quickly. Hatred twisted their faces. One of the generals snarled, raising his sword. Then we finish what the war could not. The maid gasped. She tried to step in front of the Emperor, but he gently pushed her aside. His voice cut through the room like thunder. Traitors! The word was sharp, final. The first guard lunged forward, blade gleaming. The Emperor moved like a storm. His clawed hand caught the blade mid-swing. With a twist, metal shattered like glass. The guard fell back, fear etched across his face. But the others attacked together. The generals rushed from both sides. The ministers hung back, whispering orders. More guards poured into the chamber, swords flashing. The maid ducked behind the glowing weapon, her heart racing. She wanted to scream, to run, but something inside her refused. She had built this weapon for him. She had waited for this moment. She could not abandon him now. The Emperor fought with the fury of a dragon long denied his throne. His cloak ripped as his wings spread wide, filling the chamber with shadow. Fire burned in his throat, and when he roared, the walls trembled. One general swung a heavy blade toward his head. The Emperor ducked, claws slashing upward, tearing through armor. The second general stabbed from behind, but the maid cried out, "Behind you!" The Emperor spun, tail whipping through the air, striking the attacker and sending him crashing against the wall. But there were too many. Blades struck from every angle. The maid's heart pounded as she grabbed a fallen spear. Her hands shook, but she stepped forward anyway. "Stay back!" One guard snarled, swinging at her. She ducked, thrusting clumsily with the spear. The point scraped his arm, making him stumble. For a moment, she stood frozen, shocked at her own courage. Then she raised the weapon again, her fear turning to fire. The Emperor saw her and felt a surge of pride. She was no warrior, yet she fought beside him. The traitors pressed harder. One of the ministers shouted, "Kill him before the city learns he lives." The Emperor's rage exploded. Fire burst from his mouth, a stream of blazing heat that swept across the chamber. The traitors screamed, stumbling back, their courage melting in the flames. But still they came. The maid's eyes darted to the glowing device. The weapon was ready. She rushed to it, her fingers moving fast. "My lord!" she shouted. "I can activate it." The Emperor blocked another blade, sparks flying. "Do it!" She slammed her hand on the core. The hum roared to life, brighter, louder, shaking the very floor. Blue light flooded the chamber. The traitors froze, terror in their eyes. "What have you done?" one minister screamed. The maid's voice rang clear. "I turned your weapon against you." The device unleashed a wave of energy. It rippled outward, slamming into the traitors like a storm. Swords shattered. Armor cracked. Men screamed as they were thrown back into the walls. The generals fell, broken. The ministers collapsed, groaning in fear. The guards dropped their blades and crawled for the door. The chamber fell silent. Smoke curled in the air. The weapon's glow dimmed, its energy spent. The maid fell to her knees, breathing hard. The Emperor stood in the center, his chest rising with steady breaths, his eyes blazing with victory. He looked down at the traitors, scattered and broken on his chamber floor. "You thought me dead," he said, his voice like fire and stone. "You plotted in shadows. But I live, and I see you now for what you are, cowards." The traitors whimpered, too weak to stand. None dared to meet his gaze. The emperor turned to the maid. She was exhausted, trembling, but her eyes glowed with pride. She had not run. She had stood. She had fought. "You," he said, his voice softer now, "have done what no one else dared. You faced my enemies with nothing but courage." The maid lowered her head, tears shining. "I only did what I had to, my lord. I could not let them take you from us." The emperor stepped closer. His massive clawed hand reached down, not to strike, but to lift her gently to her feet. "You are no longer just a servant," he said. "You are my ally, my savior." The maid's heart swelled. For the first time, she stood not as a maid before her master, but as a trusted protector beside her emperor. But outside the chamber, the palace still stirred. The traitors were not the only ones. More shadows moved in the dark. More whispers carried in the halls. The true war inside the palace had only begun. The smoke from battle still lingered in the emperor's chamber. Broken blades and scorched stone lay across the floor. The traitors who had dared to strike him were silent now, defeated, bound by the palace guards who had rushed in after hearing the commotion. When those loyal soldiers saw their emperor alive, they fell to their knees in shock and joy. Whispers spread like wildfire through the palace halls. "The dragon emperor lives." The maid stood beside him, her chest still rising fast with breath, her hands shaking from what she had done. Yet in her eyes burned a light of courage. She had faced death, faced betrayal, and had not turned away. The emperor's gaze lingered on her. He had led armies. He had crushed empires. He had been feared in every corner of the galaxy. But this simple maid had done what even his strongest generals had failed to do. She had protected him when he was most vulnerable. He placed a clawed hand on her shoulder, careful not to harm her. His deep voice rumbled softly. "You fought with fire in your heart," he said. "Without you, I would not stand here." The maid lowered her head, tears threatening to spill. "I only wished to save you, my lord. I could not let them win." The emperor's golden eyes softened, glowing with something rarely seen in him, gratitude. The morning after. By dawn, the palace was alive with noise. Loyal guards swept the halls, capturing the last of the traitors. Ministers who had once whispered in shadows now trembled before their emperor's wrath. The people of the city soon learned the truth. Bells rang. Fires lit the night sky in celebration. From every street, voices rose. "The emperor has returned." But in the quiet of his chambers, the emperor spoke only with the maid. She sat across from him, her hands folded nervously in her lap. She wore no jewels, no crown, only the plain clothes of her service. Yet to him, she shone brighter than any treasure. "You built that weapon to defend me," he said, "even when you thought I might never return." "Why?" She looked down, hesitant, then met his eyes with a small, brave smile. "Because I believed you would. I always believed." The emperor's chest stirred with emotion he had long forgotten. Loyalty, trust, hope. "You will not serve as a simple maid anymore," he declared. Her eyes widened. "My lord, you stood by me when all others betrayed. From this day forward, you will stand at my side. Not as servant, but as my hand, my voice, and my guardian. No one shall command you but me." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She bowed low, her voice breaking. "I will never leave your side, my emperor." A celebration of light. That night, the palace gates opened wide. The people filled the courtyards, holding lanterns of gold and red. Music filled the air. The city celebrated not only the return of their emperor, but the survival of hope itself. From the balcony, the emperor stepped forward, his great wings spread wide, his presence filling the night with awe. Beside him stood the maid, no longer hidden in shadows, but standing tall, her eyes glowing with pride and disbelief at where fate had brought her. The crowd gasped at the sight of her. Whispers ran like waves through the sea of people. Who is she? She stands with the Emperor. She must have saved him. The Emperor raised a hand, and silence fell. His voice rolled like thunder across the city. Enemies rose within my walls. They plotted in darkness. But they failed. Because when I was gone, one person stood guard. One person fought for me. One person believed. He turned, placing his hand gently on the maid's shoulder. This human saved her emperor. From this day forward, she is no longer servant. She is the protector of the dragon throne. The crowd erupted in cheers. Lanterns soared into the night sky. The maid's heart swelled with pride, but also with humility. She had never imagined her name would be spoken before thousands. She had only wanted to protect him. Now she had become part of his story forever. A new beginning. Later, when the celebration had faded and silence returned to the palace, the maid stood with the emperor in the garden. Stars sparkled above them. She looked up at him, her voice quiet. Do you ever regret the battles you fought? The emperor's eyes reflected the starlight. Every war leaves scars. But tonight I do not think of war. Tonight, I think of what was saved. Her lips curved into a small smile. Then perhaps peace will last this time. He looked at her with a rare softness. With you at my side, it will. And for the first time in many years, the emperor felt something he had thought lost forever. Peace. So the dragon emperor, feared across galaxies, returned not just to reclaim his throne, but to discover loyalty in the most unexpected heart. A maid who became a savior. A servant who became a protector. Together, they forged a bond stronger than war, stronger than betrayal, strong enough to light a future of hope. And under the starlit sky of the empire, their story was only beginning.